Bismillah, salatu wassalam ala Rasulullah, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, dear brothers and sisters watching us right now. Jumping into this episode, which is, I would think, one of the most important one that we had, as we are seeing people getting back to their work, and we're very much concerned about their safety, what's going on, how to take care of that. And at the same time, we're hearing that stuff is going on the unemployment that been like we've been benefiting from for the past, like, I think 3 months right now. So I think this is the two topics that we'll be talking on and during our episode today. And let me introduce my guests. My two guests today, one of them is, I would say, a frequent guest in the show. She came before when we asked about the unemployment and what's going on. Monica Halas is a consulting attorney at the Greater Boston Legal Services with expertise in the unemployment insurance law. And Miss Judy is the executive director of Mass Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health. Let's have a deep dive into a little bit of their bios. Monica is currently consulting attorney at Greater Boston Legal Services, where she has worked since 1979 as a staff attorney, as a senior attorney, and a lead attorney in the employment law unit. This is like exactly, again, we need to hear about that. She's a graduate of the University of Massachusetts, Boston, at Northeastern University School of Law. She has represented countless clients in unemployment insurance claims and works closely with the community-based clients and labor on systematic changes to the Massachusetts unemployment law and other public policy campaigns. Judy, as for Judy, she is the executive director of Mass Coalition for Occupational Safety and Health, where she leads her team to ensure that all workers can go to work, earn a fair wage. And there's a story about that I will tell you right now. To be treated with respect and dignity, go home to their families alive and well. She has a master's in urban and environmental policies, and she has more than 25 years of experience working environmental and social justice in Boston. Judy, I have to introduce you to my daughter. She's like, you're the exact one she'd like to talk to, like social
You're
justice, yeah. And actually, Judy is waiting for a phone call from the hospital. Hopefully that it carries a good news about her dad. So if this happens, she will like be muted, and she will be still showing with us in the show. So prior to getting live, I was having a discussion, and this discussion with Monica. I was saying that, hey, Monica, like people right now are enjoying the unemployment money, and there's a difficulty to push them back to go to work. And she said that I tend not to agree with you. So, Monica, so what's going on with unemployment money? Is it going to last forever, or like are we seeing changes in that? And why you do disagree with that?
so thank you for that provocative start to the show. First of all, as Jody will also emphasize, we have to remember that we are still in a serious pandemic that is taking people's lives. And the reason that unemployment was made available was to allow people to quarantine, to have money if their business has closed, or the place they worked has closed, or the hours have been reduced, or because they need to care for a family member because childcare is closed or elder care is closed. Or the individuals involved are over 65 or have serious health conditions that sending them back to work without assurances of the safety of the place of work is really very, very troubling and could risk their lives. So it's not being on easy street, being on unemployment. And even though there have been some increased benefits, those are not going to last past July. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on this show and to just fill you in on some of the changes that have happened since I appeared last time. Would you like me to go forward with that?
Perfect. We'll tackle those points definitely. But as you mentioned, that as people go back to work, I think this is something that Judy can answer. As people
Yes.
start to get back to work, there are, like, I would say, fears, issues. Like people are, is it the right time? while they are pushing us to go to work. So how can employers who are still in business can prepare their workplace so that it's a, I would say, safe working place? And is it like equipped? What shall we expect? So all this stuff are in the questions and in the minds of people who are lucky to still have a job and going back to work. So Judy,
Yeah.
how serious is this safety issues, and what should come into our minds as employees and employers?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. You know, the governor convened what he called a reopening advisory board. And if you have looked at the members of the reopening advisory board, it is very corporate in nature, very highly represented by large corporations and employers, nobody representing workers, and nobody representing labor or even occupational health and safety. So as a result, the guidelines that were released by the governor are sort of representative of who was on that board. And we found that they are not safe enough. We have our own panel of experts at MassCosh and Occupational Health and Safety. And while the things that it requires, social distancing, hygiene, sanitation, wearing masks, very critical piece of it, it does miss some of the really important ways that people can be exposed to COVID-19. And most importantly, those are those small aerosol droplets. I think for folks who are working outside, you're a lot safer than inside, where really you need to ensure that ventilation and other kinds of issues, ensuring that fresh air is coming through and circulating through, is really important. And one of the biggest challenges is that if there are health and safety issues, is that it's really important for workers to know that who they should call to report those. And it is not clear from any of the guidance listed online. So I think one of the things I want to make sure your listeners know is, if you feel that your employer is not meeting the guidelines that have been set out, you can call your local board of health and issue a complaint. You can call the Department of Labor Standards, which is a state agency, or the Attorney General's office has created an online form and hotline that you can call in order to talk about and raise these complaints so that you can get some support for your workers. What we recommend at MassCosh is that every workplace is different, that employers and employees work together to do a hazard assessment. They look at their place of employment and think about the 3 ways that people can be exposed to COVID, whether it's the large droplets, the fomites touching things, or these small droplets. Find how workers can be exposed, and then develop ways to protect workers and employers. In many ways, people are working in the same buildings, from those 3 ways that they can be exposed. What kinds of engineering controls, what kinds of ways can you change the way that work is done to ensure that people are distant and separate, and most importantly, make sure that workers are part of that process, and ensure that workers have a real voice in the process, and also how it's communicated to customers as well.
Yeah, this is very nice, Judy. And you mentioned something that's very important regarding ventilation,
Mhm.
and be sure that fresh air is inside. But you know that sometimes, like, we work inside buildings that are like sealed, cubicle stuff, and we have this AC goes on. Is there anything we need to do regarding to like cleaning the AC filters, whatever, like
Yeah.
doing a maintenance, so that we make sure that when we bring back our employees, they are safe?
Yep. I think there is that you need to make sure your ventilation system's working well. You need to clean the filters regularly. And in fact, for buildings that have been empty for a long time, you really want to do that to prevent exposure potentially to Legionnaire's disease and other things that could have built up within the system. But there's something that the National Institute for Occupational Science and Health Science, NIOSH, I always forget what it stands for. It's called the hierarchy of controls. And it means that you start by looking at ways you can eliminate the hazard. And if you can't eliminate the hazard, you look at engineering controls, better ventilation, barriers, plastic barriers to protect people. And then finally, if you can't eliminate the hazard by those kinds of controls, then you turn to personal protective equipment. And that is the masks and other kinds of face shields and respirators. And the more enclosed you are, the less ventilation, the higher level of protective gear that you want to be providing.
Nice. That's very interesting, and we might ask you about like some of those entities and state agencies that we might need to reach out. If you can put them later on after the show, if you can
Sure.
put them in the comments, that would be great.
Yeah.
So, Monica, what is the relation between 31st of July and unemployment? What's going to happen post this date after the end of July?
So, unfortunately, it's a little bit sooner. It's after July 25th.
Oh,
The extra $600 a week will no longer be available. And that is an amount of money that anybody who was getting any form of unemployment, whether it's state benefits or the federal extension or pandemic unemployment, was getting on top of whatever their other unemployment check was. But those benefits end July 25th. There is an attempt in Congress to extend those $600 weekly checks. It was in the HEROES Act that was passed by the House of Representatives, but it's now in the Senate, and the Republican senators are not in favor of that particular provision, so we're not sure if it can be extended at all.
hold on, Monica. Yeah. So I think I missed the last part. Monica, can you repeat that?
Um, I was essentially saying that it looks like there will not be a further extension, so that the $600 extra a week
Yeah.
will end on July 25th.
What about those $1,200 that people got as like, I don't know what was the program.
The
This,
stipend, yes, I
that's
don't
right.
think, yes, I haven't heard any discussion of the stipend continuing, although there, it's hard to know. There are certainly economists and others saying that this is going to be a deeper recession than was originally predicted, so that there will be absolutely a need for greater resources to both the individuals and to the states and local governments as well. I Yeah,
So
there are
yeah,
some additional benefits that were not available when we spoke last time. If you would like me to cover those as well.
yeah, I would like that, but like I would like to ask you as a citizen now. So what will happen to those 33 unemployed if we cut 33 million unemployed, if we cut this unemployment benefits while still the economy is in recession, and those still have to buy food, to pay rent, and to live. So what will happen to them? What's the options will be in front of them?
Well, the $600 a week is ending. The rest of the unemployment program, the well, if I can step back for a minute, there's essentially two separate unemployment insurance programs. One is for people who have W-2 earnings. And in Massachusetts, you need at least $5,100 in the last year, and you're eligible for regular unemployment benefits. Those are up to 26 weeks of state benefits. And after that, you can get an additional federal 13 weeks of benefits. In addition, there's the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program that is available for people who usually don't get any unemployment. So that's self-employed, independent contractors, religious workers, full-time, either college or part-time or high school students who lost their part-time job, or if you didn't earn enough W-2 income to qualify for regular benefits, all those people can get pandemic unemployment assistance. That program lasts until December 26th. Usually, what's happened in recessions, like the last recession, is if there is still high rates of unemployment, then Congress enacts additional extensions of benefits.
Okay, that's nice. Nice to hear. So thank you, Monica, for that. Back to Judy. Uh, Judy, like who are the workers most at risk from reopening? We know that media have been talking about the frontliners and people at risk. However, there are others we have seen, like when you go outside right now, there are people like right now working outside. So who are the most people at risk workers? They need to get out and at risk. Can you classify them for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the workers who are working in more enclosed spaces are more at risk, and some of those folks have been working all along. Frontline workers in our fish processing plants in New Bedford and meatpacking plants around the state, healthcare workers, workers who've been working in long-term care facilities and other direct care facilities. The union that represents them, AFSCME 93, got the executive office that of Health and Human Services to post COVID-19 data online. And as of June 9th, 890 public sector employees who worked in those facilities had tested positive for COVID-19. So, those working in these settings, and I think essential workers who've been working, and now those who've joined the workforce in phase 1 and phase 2, we've learned a little bit more, but those who were on the front lines in the beginning, before we had adequate supply of PPE, before people were wearing masks, those who were driving buses and other professions or other occupations that put us in the front line, put you in contact with the public. Those are the folks most at risk. I'll say though that we're missing a really big piece of information, and that is when people test positive for COVID-19 currently, the state is not collecting information on their occupation, their industry, or their workplace. And what that means is, even though we know that workplace exposure is a major way that people have contracted COVID-19 and sharing it among their family, friends, and community, we don't have good information. A new bill that was passed and signed by the governor has the State Department of Public Health at least collecting occupation. But for us to really know who is most at risk, we really need to better understand which of those understand those who are testing positive, what industry they're in, so that we can better identify those, and especially who their employers are, so we can identify workplace outbreaks quickly. I will say, we know that COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on people of color, and we believe that work is playing a significant role in that as well, because so many of those essential workers who had to continue leaving their homes to work were disproportionately people of color. So we believe that work is playing an impact, as well as other factors, on that disproportionate impact of the virus on those communities.
This is a very nice remark. Thank you for sharing this with us. So, like, what are the distinct line between the responsibility and liability between the employees and the employer? And how can they work together towards achieving, like, I would say, a safer workplace?
Yeah. I think there's two questions there. The first is, how can they work together to achieve a safer workplace? And I think that is the question sort of answers that, is workers and employers need to be working together to identify where the risks are and develop health and safety practices and procedures together. I think this question of liability is a really interesting one that's been coming up, and one that has me, as someone who's worked in occupational health and safety for a while, very confused, because about 100 years ago, workers and employers kind of struck a deal and said, listen, if we get injured or hurt on the job, we won't sue you if you promise to take care of us. And that is done through workers' compensation. And workers' compensation insurance is, if you get injured or killed on the job, will provide medical coverage and wage replacement. And if you're killed on the job, benefits to your family, including even funeral costs and other benefits for the rest of your life if you're a spouse, or for a child through college. So when employers start talking about this issue of liability, I think that it's really important to remember that we have a system in place, not perfect, but the workers' compensation system in places is a really critical, important tool for those who get COVID-19 or through workplace exposure. And Work groups like Masscosh and many of our partners in the labor movement are working to ensure that stays in place by getting what's called occupational presumption. If you were an essential worker who worked outside the home during, or a worker working during the state of emergency, and you contract COVID-19, it is presumed that you got it through workplace exposure, and therefore you get that workers' compensation insurance that is critical for you to have to heal and to quarantine if needed. So it's a really critical, workers' compensation is going to play a really critical role in this, especially for those who don't have healthcare coverage. I think it's a really important tool. And for those who've lost a loved one to COVID-19 from workplace exposure, their families deserve those benefits.
That's a very good remark and a point. Thank you for sharing this, Judy. Back to Monica. Monica, I would like to ask you, like, if I return back to my work, however, on a lesser hourly schedule. I used to like to work 40, and now it's like 20, and now it's 10 hours a week. Okay, will I still be able to collect some unemployment insurance? This number one. Number two, I know that it's like loaded question. And if like they moved me from W2 into like 1099, do I still like earn unemployment insurance as well? So two things: decreasing hours while it's still on W2, or
Okay.
like decreasing hours and changing into a contractor rather than a W2 employee.
Okay. Great questions. So first, whether or not you can continue to collect unemployment. So that really depends. The answer is, first of all, yes, you can work and be partially elig- eligible for partial unemployment benefits. And if you get even $1 of unemployment, you get that extra $600 a week until July 25th. Whether the individual can get that depends on the mathematics of that situation. When you are working, there's what's called an earnings disregard. 1/3 of your earnings are not counted against your check or your benefit amount. And after that, there's a dollar for dollar deduction. So what I mean by that is if, for example, your unemployment, not counting the extra 600, just your regular unemployment is $300 a week, and you are now earning $150 a week. In that case, the first 100 wouldn't count against your unemployment, and the $50 would be deducted. So you would have your $150 of earnings and $250 of unemployment. In addition, you cannot earn an amount that is equal or more than 133% of your benefit. So again, in the same example, you can't earn $400 or more because that represents 133% of that $300 amount. Is that clear, or clear as mud? Did I answer your first question? Can't hear you.
The second one is the 1099 thing.
Okay. So that's a very interesting question. An employer cannot just decide to pay you 1099 because there has to be a finding on whether or not the person is a worker or an independent contractor. And the test is pretty stringent, and the presumption is that if you are under the direction and control of your employer, then you are an employee. You can't be treated as an independent contractor.
Okay. And if like I'm not, and it's 1099, do contractors have unemployment insurance?
Yes, so that was one of the good new programs that Congress enacted. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program is for people who are not usually eligible for unemployment, and it includes independent contractors.
That's very nice. That's awesome. Thank you for that, Monica. Because like we keep like having some of our community members who used to work for W2 and now 1099, and who like used to
Right.
run like they have W2 for multiple employers, and now it's like it went down to one, and some even
Right.
lost all their work.
Right.
So
It's
yeah,
it's
this
it's very difficult for people who have those two sources of income. And essentially, the thing to remember is if they had $5,100 or more of W-2, they have to go into the regular unemployment insurance program. And then any 1099 earnings are unfortunately deducted from their weekly benefit amount if they continue working as a 1099, even if they've lost their
the
W-2
W2.
job.
That's
Yes.
that's that's very good. Fine. So Judy, like the question for you, like now let's assume that people are getting back to work, they've been asked to get back to work, whether like 2 days a week or like 3 days or like normal working hours. And let's put the assumption that the employer is not doing 100% good job on that. It's a corporate life and not doing 100%. What measures for me as an employee should I have to take so that I take care of myself?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the
Zakaria,
first
can you yeah, go.
Yep. Yep. The first step is if you believe that your employer is not meeting the state guidelines around maintaining a workplace where you can have social distancing, where you can or requiring customers and others are wearing face masks, the hygiene and disinfection and sanitation. If you believe that your employer is not meeting those state guidelines, then you should call your local board of health to let them know and issue a complaint. Your local board of health may hear from multiple customers or multiple employees and can come and inspect and or call the employer to try to help them better understand how they can come into compliance.
Are
Um,
there any education programs available for employers so that they abide by the rule?
Yeah, this is something that we thought was a really critical piece that is missing, particularly for small employers. A lot of small employers are, for instance, hairdressers and others. They're on the floor. They're connected to their employees. The line between employer and employee is very minimal, and there are a lot of guidelines and a lot of things that these small businesses can and should be doing to protect themselves and their employees. But there is no technical assistance or support that is being provided. And as part of the Massachusetts Equity Task Force that's convened by the Mass Public Health Association, a group of about 80 organizations before we moved to phase 2 set out some criteria. And one of those were stronger enforceable workplace standards and better technical support to these small businesses. Having said that, MassCosh provides a lot of training and support to workers and to sometimes small employers as well. One thing that we have on our website, which is www.masscosh.org, is a toolkit for workers that allows them to know their rights. It goes through all of the different pieces of the reopening plan, laws that protect you from OSHA, which are minimal, our federal standards, and then the different kinds of health and safety protections for each different industry that workers may be in at this point in time, and links to different fact sheets. That tool is on our website and can be used by employers together with their employees to develop health and safety plans. But I think the city of Boston has done one step forward in that they do have a grant program for small businesses to be able to access funds for personal protective equipment and other kinds of things they may need to open safely. And I think the city's website has information about how small businesses can access those resources.
Perfect. That's awesome, Judy. If you can, like after the show, dial them in, just put them in the comments so that people can access those. That would
Sure.
be great. And actually, thank you very much, Judy, for that. Any final comments, Monica, on the money parts? Any like words for our yeah?
Yes, this isn't on the money part. It's really on what Jody was saying. I would underscore what a wonderful job MassCosh has done with their toolkit, and people will find it very, very useful when they go to that site.
Awesome. And I bet that we'll be accessing those and put them as well in our mosque so that at least we educate ourselves and educate our community. Thank you very much, Monica and Judy, for an interesting, enlightening, informative interview. I really enjoyed that, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.